Okay, we're back with our brother Muhammad Dr. And so he has, I'm not sure which part this is going to be. This could be maybe part three or part four or whatever. But he has, in previous versions, or previous parts, he's mentioned about his life, which he had with his family. And from his family, he mentioned about his marriage with his first wife, how he met his current wife, and then the situations which led to a police chase, which ultimately led to his incarceration. And so we want to pick it up from there.
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى.
Okay. Whew. So if you can, as you can imagine, this time is rough. This time is rough. I remember my wife was actually pregnant at the time, 7 month pregnant. And I called, it was like 12:30 maybe. And I said, now, mind you, this is right after a long argument. And I called, obviously Colette. She picks up, and I said, hey, tell my daughters I love them. I ain't gonna be around for a while. And I hung up. And that was it. So they checked me in. And as they're checking me in,
Check you into the jail.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. They done took my picture. My hair looking crazy. And I had a dog had mauled my arm. I got scars all over from the dog, and so I went to the hospital. That's where they picked me up from, transported me, and they ended up checking me in, and I'm sitting here doing the process basically. And of course, I had never been in trouble outside of that time, 10 years prior to that when I was in juvie. And this was definitely different. I knew somebody had lost their life, and I knew it was serious. So ultimately, I'm not. See, people go to prison or jail under different circumstances. Some people get told on. Some people do certain things that they mean to do, and then some people just have circumstances like mine that unravel, and there's no intent behind it. There's no premeditation behind it, but at the same time, the loss is great, and the consequences are dire. So they end up putting me in a wing, and I remember at this time, I'm not really feeling anything. I'm not really feeling fear because I've always been able to handle myself, and I knew that where I was going wasn't no guns, so you can't shoot me. And I always felt good about my ability to defend myself. But the uncertainty and never have been in the county jail like that, and being in an area where, the Kansas City County Jail could be rough at times, and it hits you as soon as you walk in. I didn't come in there with cliques. I wasn't part of a gang. There wasn't any Dominicans there. So it was to the point where
You didn't have any allies.
Exactly. I was in there by myself. So they bringing me in, and I remember holding this box. And this individual is about to bring me in the wing. And he turns around and he says, open number 4. He said, open number 4. And right then and there, something told me that God had my back. 4 had always been my number.
I remember you mentioned that.
And that door being open and him telling me that was my cell, right then and there, it was like, yo, this is my cell. I'm supposed to be here, but God got my back. And I remember that feeling that I got when that happened, and actually going in there and feeling like I owned the place because of the cell number that I got. Ultimately, God will choose situations that are the hardest in our lives in order to make the most growth. And I said how my father's relationship with myself wasn't any good ever since that time we went into foster care. Well, my parents was already living in Florida. I said that earlier as well. And being in trouble like this, the instances that I had seen my father prior to this, where he knew that I was in the streets and Dominicans was talking about me and putting my name in a negative light in society, that hurt my father. So he saw me and basically tried to admonish me about the things that I was doing. And by this time, it had been so long that we wasn't together, and the streets had hardened me a little bit. And I was rough around the edges, and I was feeling invisible, you know. So it went sour every time I seen him. Even came to the point one time where I wanted to throw hands with him. And I remember 2 days after my being put in the county jail, my father popping up. And I'm thinking to myself, yo, what this dude want? And straight up, like, as soon as we picked up the phones, I wanted to tell him, like, look, man, I'm not trying to hear it, man. I'm in here, ain't no telling. And then he stopped me. He just stopped me. And I remember my father, man, my father's a strong dude. Never had I seen him cry before. Even at his father's funeral, he was always the one strongest for his family. And right then and there, this man picked up the phone, he stops me and he says, yo, you my heart. I'm here for you. And I'm gonna do anything I can to get you out. And I got your back. You my heart. Once he said them words to me, I came back to my cell and I was happy. I was overjoyed. It was a relief. And I remember right then and there, I said, it doesn't matter what happens from here and on out. It doesn't matter what I had to go through. It doesn't matter if I got to do many years in prison. I got my father back. And that meant something to me. And it meant that much to where it made me feel happy once again, even in that, just because I had him back. So that was something that happened right away. And see, Allah knows how to send us relief through all circumstances. And 60 days after I became incarcerated, my wife gave birth to my youngest daughter. And I remember writing a letter. It was 5 in the morning, a time that I'm usually never writing or even up. And I write this letter, and I was writing the letter as she was giving birth. Fast forward a little bit. This is January 8th. Fast forward a little bit, and it's April. Got my mom's crying on the phone, and she just, oh, baby, it's your birthday. I can't believe you in there. This, you know, and moms just being moms. So I'm in there, and I said, moms, don't worry about it, yo. Everything is good. I said, the only thing I could ever want is to hold my daughter. Because by this time, there were no contact visits in the county jail. They had stopped that in January. So April 12th, this is April 4th, I'm saying this to my mom. April 12th, they come to the wing over the intercom and say, Pujols, get ready for transportation. So I'm like, transportation? I ain't got nowhere to go. They tell me I got a court date. Well, I didn't have a court date. It was my brother that had the court date. But they mixed us up because his name was Wilfredo, mine is Wilfredo. And they mixed up our records off the flip. And I called my wife. I said, yo, they about to take me to court. Sit behind me. Sit behind me. We get to court. And they stop my brother. As soon as he comes in, he tries to say, yo, they had kicked him out. Sent him outside. My wife sitting right behind me. They doing the proceedings. And I say to my wife, nah, she's got my baby this close. and I say to my wife, yo, when I lean back, proper up, I'ma steal a kiss.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. And the chains is around my waist. And as soon as I sat back down, the chains clunked, clap. And the lady walks up to me. And I said, look. She said, that's a beautiful baby. I said, look, I'm not trying to talk about it. You can put me in the hole when I get back. It's all good. She like, nah, I don't want to put you in the hole. I want to take your cuffs off and let you hold her.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what? She said, yeah. If the other guard says it's all right, I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Shorty was the other guard.
Mm-hmm.
And he from Brooklyn. So we had already spoke about New York. We had already hit it off. So I'm like, oh, hold up, man. So I'm like, yo, I'm finna hold her. Shorty come back. I said, Shorty, man, she said I could hold her. And she said, you ain't gonna give me no problems. But I said, nah, man, you crazy, man. They let me hold my daughter, man.
Mm-hmm.
So here it is. Somebody walks up to me and they say, you know, they're not supposed to do that, right? Mm-hmm. I said, I know. They doing angels work right now, you know. And that's the type of relief that God had been sending me to where I remember leaving there and I said, man, I should have asked for something else. but it's enough that I got what I wanted. Mm-hmm. So the process was lengthy, and this was definitely, undoubtedly, the hardest time of my life, because up until this time, everybody had loved me. I had never had an enemy in my whole life, not in the streets, not as a child, anywhere, because my people skills and the way I treated people and dealt with people and even came through for people made it to where everybody showed me love. Mm-hmm. But when you take somebody's baby, when you are a part of a situation that takes somebody's baby early from their life, them people will hate you, understandably so.
The kid who got
the victim,
killed.
My victim's mothers, yeah.
Right, okay.
The mother, the family, the father, the friends. You know, it was the first time ever that my name was basically put down in the mud, you know, and had people wishing ill upon me. Mm-hmm. So of course that was really hard, and at the same time, of course I was beating myself up. So it was a process to where me getting my father back gave me relief, but it was still just so weighty and so heavy. And there goes the process where you have to actually learn how to live. And man, I remember basically once I got my father back, saying that I had to stay strong for my family. And then I made the decision. I said, yo, if you're gonna make it through this and you're gonna be upright when you leave, you need God in your life. You gotta get familiar with God. You gotta be about that. Mm-hmm. And I remember picking up the Bible and even starting a Bible study with some of the fellas in the wing. That's what I did, because I felt like that's the only way I could make it through and actually be right.
Okay. And so this is so you said that they meant to call your brother, but they called you. So did you get your court date or?
No, I just showed up and then they told me it was a mistake that they had, but it wasn't a mistake. Okay. God had brought me there if I could hold my daughter.
Hold your daughter. Okay.
And yeah.
And so then after you had made all of this incredible transition, man, from family life to street life, now you're incarcerated. And so when you're incarcerated, that's when you had this consciousness, this natural consciousness of remembering God. And so then you try to remember God the way that you had culturally that you had known to do. So you went to the Bible. Yeah. Okay? And so then what happened after that?
Man, I started from the beginning. And it was one of those things where it felt good. You feel like you're doing the right thing, but at the same time, the lack of guidance made it to where I still had that monkey on my back. Mm-hmm. So you start looking around, and once you find out the situation, once you find out, they are getting things in here. Yeah, they are giving people medication that'll make you high. They are giving people pills that you can buy. They are, this guy's sleeping his time away. This guy's doing this. This guy's doing that. So then, naturally, I get sucked in right back into that.
Mm-hmm.
And another great time for me was I got into a fight in there. More than one, obviously. But this one in particular, I said that I was always somebody that handled myself pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was taking these pills, and it was knocking me out, putting me to sleep. A situation arose early in the morning, and it came time for me to defend myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't function right. And I got beat like I stole something.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. The fight ended because he got tired of punching me. but I didn't go down. And as soon as it was over, I said, man, I can't do that no more.
Mm.
I cannot do that no more. That dude, look, that tooth was hanging on. It was moving like this.
Mm.
And I never wanted to go through that again. And I realized, yo, you could put yourself in a situation where you're going to get taken down in here. So that woke me up. And that straightened me out. And that's God.
So having that lack of control is a strong weakness, right? Or that when you don't have any control over your faculties and you can't defend yourself, whatever, that's a huge weakness in the joint. So.
Oh yeah, not only is it a weakness, but to me, I was shell shocked. You know, I couldn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, it ended up being a blessing in so many ways. And first off, because I actually stopped taking those pills. Second of all, the individual that I got into it with was in a gang, so that could have brought me serious consequences with a gang. And
if you would have beat him up,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So you know, it was blessings all the way around. And I saw plenty of people get into situations where they had 4 or 5 guys on their head, and that could have been me, but it wasn't. So God, he protected me in so many ways, and it's a beautiful thing because I can look back and say getting beat up was the best thing that happened to me at the time.
Alhamdulillah, yeah.
And you know, it's one of those things. After that, you know, going through the court process, it was lengthy. Like I said, I was in there 19 months. And the county time is hard time. No contact with your family. I had the support of my wife, who actually she did it like she could write a book on how to do time with somebody, because that's how she did it. And me and her, we sat down and we talked about what to expect from one another and how we were going to do the time, because ultimately I was not comfortable doing the time like that, because I knew myself, and I wasn't to be in a position where I was worried about somebody and what they doing on the streets or any of that. I felt like I personally wanted to break it off, but she didn't allow that. And she actually always reiterated the fact that she was doing what she wanted to do, and that she wanted to do it. So I let her. And ultimately, the way she did it, it made it to where we were able to. So that came with a lot of visits. That came with me seeing my daughter, you know, even if it was through a glass. And ultimately, I could have got my case overturned to the point where at least I could have got lesser charges. There was a lot of things that came out that the police did. Long story short, victim's family ended up being compensated because of the police role in it. And outside of the fact that my lawyer basically sold me out and coerced me to plead guilty, outside of that, I wouldn't have pled guilty. And ultimately I did, because we were sitting there in the room, and he's telling me about the penalty of it, and he's telling me, well, you did this, you did this, you did this, and I was not comfortable saying I murdered somebody. So the charge itself, I'm like, I didn't murder nobody. So he kept saying 20, 25, 30. My wife heard this, and she said, look, man, the man saying he can get you 12 or better. Don't let these people hit you over the head. Take your time, go down. We're going to be right here waiting on you. So that's what happened. I pled guilty that morning. And I got sentenced to 15 years. Everybody was there. My mom, my dad, they came in from out of town. My wife was there. A lot of family, a lot of support. But ultimately, I was about to get 20 years the plea deal was 20 years, and the pressure that they was getting from the prosecutor and from the victim's family and from everybody who was involved was great. And the man asked, "What about the defendant? Does he want to say anything?" And right then, my lawyer looks at me with this stupid look on his face that I never forget. So I shook my head. I said, "Yeah, I want to say something."
Mm-hmm.
At this point, he hadn't done nothing for me. All he said was, "Your Honor, he's a good kid. He didn't mean to. Take it easy on him." That's basically my defense from this dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood up and I spoke from the heart. I apologized to the family. And after hearing what I said, the judge clearly said, I came here to give him 20 years per the plea deal. But after hearing him speak, it was sincere. He ain't a bad person, so I'm going to give him 15.
Mm-hmm.
And alhamdulillah. Ultimately, I ended up doing every day of that 15. But even then, I remembered the day that I could have got 20. So in a way, I was like, yo, I'm good. I'm good.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So at this point, your trial is over.
Yes.
So you're headed to what, state prison?
Headed to the big house.
Headed to the big house.
Yeah.
And then so this is when this is the ultimate, like you started with your family, you headed to the streets, and then for consequences related to the life you're living on the streets, you went to county, and then now you headed to the big house.
Yeah.
So it's got to feel like, man, my life has just made some incredible turns, and like now this is, I'm living, I'm paying for all the decisions that I made, right? What were you thinking at this point?
I was thinking it was a long time. I was thinking that it was going to be all right.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I had no choice. But I never lost sight of the fact that somebody had lost a son.
Yeah.
That somebody had lost a brother. That there was somebody that was not coming home. So how could I be selfish enough to be thinking that I should not be in prison?
Right.
And that ultimately helped me be all right with it. And I also knew that there was a good possibility I'd be back out and that I would still have a life to lead like I am leading now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember first day I went to prison. And I actually spoke about this in one of my podcasts, in one of my episodes, All Things 100. And everybody was nervous. Everybody is lined up. You know the movie scene where the bus is pulling up. They call it the Grey Goose. The Grey Goose is pulling up, and everybody lines up. They want to see the fresh meat. So you got guys, first time in prison, like myself. They sitting there nervous, shook, scared. And I wasn't any of those things. But, of course, you don't know what to expect. And what made it easiest for me, my first day in prison, was I get inside the yard, and the first thing I see is dudes playing softball.
Mm.
Dudes is playing softball, and I walk around this gate, and I walk up to this field, and this field is nice. This field is level. This field is, the grass is trimmed right. The infield is they done worked on the infield. It's smooth. And I'm seeing these guys out here playing softball. So right away, it just went away. And all the worries that I had, I was thinking about appeals. I was thinking about this and that. By this time, when I look at this field, I forgot about it all. And I said, I can do this time. I walked up to dude. I said, hey, man, what do I do to get out here?
Mm-hmm.
He said, y'all at rec right now. 6 hours at rec. I said, I can go drop this off and come out here and play. And that's what I did. I went in there. I dropped my stuff off, went right out to the field.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest was history. I said before that I'm related to Albert Pujols, and we talking about 2009. He had already won his first ring with the Cardinals. He was the best player in the game. He was on SportsCenter all day, every day. And from the guards to the inmates to the caseworkers, everybody was a fan of his.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is, they running my case on TV and they blasting my business out here, and they use the fact that I am related to Albert and that I went to school with him to basically get more eyeballs on the screen. So every chance they had, they was throwing me right under the bus. Famous player pools, so they did this over and over.
Cousin that went wrong type of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I'm in prison. I got all these pictures. I got Albert, autographs, personal pictures, baseball pictures. So they were basically amazed by this stuff. Here it is, one of their idols, and somebody who kin to him and actually is familiar with him is in here. And then I go out on the field and I'm hitting bombs. I'm talking about I'm hitting houses.
Man.
I'm hitting them back to back. They got to the point where once I was going out there, they would pull up just to watch me hit. It was like watching home run derby. And then the inmates see me walking by and they're like, yo, come here, man, hit this ball for us. Oh, that's fool hole right there, man. And then Albert on screen and everybody coming out on the yard. So in a way, it was a relief for me. And it made me somebody who everybody loved in there too. And then once you see the family connection, but once you deal with me, now you feel even stronger about me because you're like, man, this is a cool dude. He ain't tripping about being related to Albert. He ain't feeling like he just all that, this and that. He one of the fellas. And, back then I'm still misguided at the time. So then people start pulling up because they know I got a little money. And they like, yo, what's up? I got this, And then I'm still back to the same cycle, So here I am. I'm praying a rosary and doing 25, 30 minutes worth of scripture, Hail Marys, and All Our Fathers. And then I'm putting that down and picking up a book that I shouldn't be looking at, and then, puffing on something I shouldn't be hitting. And then it's one of those things to where it always catches up to me. As long as if I didn't have the guidance, it would always find a way to veer its way back up. And when you're presented with these situations, and then they say, somebody makes juice. Hey, all you got to do is get 6 orange juices. What? I get orange juice. So then we right back at it again. So it's like you on the streets, and if you don't got the guidance, man, I'm telling you, it always catches back up. So it was a situation where I spent my first 3 years, my first 4 years was in a level 5 institution, right? So I'm in there, and this is 2009 when I got there.
Level 5 is that?
That's a maximum facility.
I got you. Okay, maximum facility. Okay.
Yeah, because depending on how much time you got, and I came down with a 15-year sentence, so at the time, anything more than 8 was a level 5.
I got you. Okay.
So here it is, and it caught up to me again, and I'm still. So I start fighting my case. So now I'm going back and forth, and I was hopeful. I had got a new lawyer, and ultimately they end up getting to him too. And it was one of those situations, the politics in my case, which I'm not going to get too much into, but the politics in my case made it to where they didn't want me back in court. And any lawyer that showed up to represent me ultimately got handed a bag to keep me. You see, so it was like, nah, we need him. You can have these, but we need him. And I became that guy. And even when it came down to parole, I had done all the classes. I had done everything I could do in there. But it was still, we going to keep him. And I had to do every day on my 15-year sentence, even though I was eligible for parole after 12 years, 9 months. So I'm sitting there going back and forth. And it was one of those things to where by now it was weighing on me, but I had this lawyer talking good to me, and rightfully so. He had got a file, internal affair file. He broke it down to me. He's like, look, you never got this. This is discovery. This is, golden. You coming back. And, I'm okay. The news is painting it that way. Ultimately, he ends up selling me out. But I go to county jail. I'm going to court. And I'm getting on the elevator. And I see this book. The book with the color of this lid right here.
Okay.
And it's in the office. So I see this book. And by now, I'm trying to read a book because there's nothing to do. In the county jail, you got the TV, dudes is being too loud, they slapping cars, you can't really hear nothing, so what's the point of watching it? So you hit the corner and then you just start reading something, and I needed a book. It didn't matter what, I would just read to pass the time. So I see this blue book, And I seen Sergeant Evans, and I knew him from obviously being there 19 months in that building. And I'm like, yo, Sergeant, let me get the book. And he like, what book? I said, the blue one. He look at it, he like, all right, you can get it. I go and come back. I tell the lady, I said, yo, Sarge said I can get the book. She looking at me like, what? I said, man, come on, he gonna come back. Just ask him. She like, here, threw me the book. It was the translation of the Quran. And before now, my little brother had became Muslim, right? Before me, a couple years before me. But my little brother was always my little brother. He was never somebody that I could take guidance from.
Okay.
So he tells me about it, but to me, that don't mean nothing. Because I'm like, yo, he ain't talking about nothing. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get out and I'm going to do this. This is what I'm on, this and that. But that day, she puts that translation in my hand. And I'm like, what? This is the book? So I don't believe in coincidences. And I'm not the guy who's going to be asking for something and then getting it and then be like, nah, I don't want it. So I took it. I put it on the bunk. I come back. I start with the introduction, just like I do any other book. And then, like right towards the beginning, it says, the Quran is the word of God. And the way it just said it, like it was factual, you know. I was like, man, the word of God. And I keep reading and reading and reading. And I'm like, yo, this sounds like it's true. If it wasn't true, you couldn't print this. You couldn't get away with this. So I read the whole introduction, and now it's got me. Now I'm like, oh my goodness, yo, I don't know about this. How come I don't know about this?
Okay.
So I get back to Crossroads, and I pull up on one of the guys that live in my wing, and I say, hey, I need you to tell me or get me a book on what you guys believe, how you believe, why you believe that, how you pray, why you pray like that. And ultimately, he brought me a book on the 5 pillars, a little less than 300 pages. And I started reading this book, and I knew that it was something that I didn't know about that I should have known about. And right away, I started doubting everything I ever believed in. And I even went as far as to just stop doing my rosaries. I stopped praying in the manner that I was praying. And I went straight to God, just saying, God, show me the truth. Show me the truth. Guide me. Help me. And my heart was open to Islam. And I knew that I was reading the truth.
So from this point, you hadn't talked with Muslims about Islam or anything. So it was basically you just happened to come across this blue book, and that blue book happened to be the Quran. And Allah guided you that way?
Yeah. I had never had, outside of my brother telling me about it in passing, I had never even gave it a thought. I never knew what it was. And yeah, that's all it was. I read that introduction. Then he brought me the book. I read the book. And while I was reading the book, my people got wind of it. My parents got wind of it. So I get on this call. And obviously nobody in my family knows what it is. Even through my little brother, they didn't know what it was. My little brother was a Muslim over 10 years before he even came out and told people he was Muslim.
Okay.
You know, so you can't get guidance from something like that. So they get on the phone with me and they like, yo, Junior, they told you reading this book? Oh, you got to put that down. Man, I'm telling you, even if you don't follow it, something is going to get stuck with you. And so they literally passed the phone down to people. It was my mom, then my dad, then my grandma, then my sister, then my sister's husband at the time, or her baby's father. And they all get on the phone trying to talk me out of it. Ultimately, my father touched me because he was like, yo, don't do it, this and that. And I felt like I had put my parents through enough. So I'm like, damn, yo, I'm not going to do it. I got to put this book up. I go and I take this book back. I got a knot right here, right there. That knot, I'm giving this book back to him. And I had slid something under the door countless times. But I'm slipping this book under the door. And as I'm coming up, I hit my head on the door handle. Put a knot on my head. And I was wearing a scully at the time. If I didn't have that scully, I probably would have bled. So I go get a bag of ice. And I'm sitting on this on this stool like this with this bag of ice on my head, and I'm thinking to myself, that's what you get for taking the book bag. That's what you get for taking the book bag. So I hold the ice. It's like a night or two, I can't sleep, I'm restless. And I knew what it was. So I went back. At that moment, I made the decision. I said, I don't care who's with it, who's against it. This is between me and God. So I went back to him and I said, hey man, you still got that book? He said, yeah, what, you didn't read it? I said, nah, I didn't finish it, let me get it. So I get the book back, I finish it through. This time is about the beginning of April. My case hadn't panned out how I wanted it at the time. And it was the beginning of April, and I told my wife, I said, yo, I've been reading Islam. I've been reading about Islam. And I'm telling you, I feel like it's the truth. And I might become Muslim. So that was just me giving her a heads up. Because I'm a straight up dude. I'm not going to hide nothing from her. She holding me down, you know what I mean? So I tell her. And ultimately, a month later, it was May 6th, Sunday, May 6th of 2012. I'm taking a nap late morning, and I had a dream. I go to my uncle's house. My uncle is in the back. I think he's getting a haircut.
In his dream.
In his dream, yeah. So I'm walking around my uncle's house. Like I used to do. It was a thing. I go to my relative house. It's my house. It ain't no, hey, no. I'm just walking around wandering, looking at who's doing what, finding my cousin, my little cousin, my auntie, just walking around. So I go back there. He getting his haircut down. I go back towards the front. Ultimately, I end up on the front porch. And I always been tight with kids. Kids, man, they always been my heart. And they got a real aspect to them that they don't do no faking. If you give a kid something and they taste it, they be like, if they don't like it, ain't no, and they gonna tell you, yeah, it's good just to make you feel good. Yeah. So, you know, I always been cool with all the kids in my family, but I'm in the front porch and I got these grown-ups, and then one of them is holding the kid, man. He about 8 to 10 years old. He crying. So I come out and I look, I say, yo, what's wrong with him? They like doing that stuff, you know, like, oh, he ain't talking about nothing type of stuff. So I just walk up to this kid and I say, hey, what's wrong? The little kid looks at me between tears and says, I want to be a Muslim. I woke up that day and I was like, yo, I'm going to do it. I gotta be Muslim. So I went to Rashid and I knock on his door and I'm like,
now, hold on. So at this point, had you been talking with the Muslims about things, about Islam or anything like that? Or this is just from your reading?
This is just me reading.
In your dreams, mashallah.
Me reading.
Okay.
People got wind of me studying Islam and even started bringing me stuff. Some people brought me some erroneous stuff, but I saw right through that because I had already read the book on the 5 pillars. No. And yeah, it was just through my reading. Now, the only Muslim that I knew, he wasn't really like ever teaching me nothing, and he wasn't really on point like that. So yeah, it was just my reading. But I knew that he was Muslim, so I just went to him and I was like, yo, by this time I had read, you know, details about what you do, why you do it, the belief system, all that, right? So I just went to him and I was like, yo, I'm going to do it. And he was like, yeah? I said, yeah, by Thursday. This is Sunday now. He's like, Thursday? Why Thursday? I said, nah, just give myself some time. And I go to lunch that day. And he in the chow hall, and it's him, brother named Daoud, and then the brother named Sultan. I never met these brothers before. So I go up there where she's like, yo, sit right here, Pooh. I sit down. They just all right here. We're about to eat chop. And Sultan just looked at me and was like, you want to take Shahada? I thought about it for a split second. I say, yeah.
What's Shahada?
Shahada, that's the testimony, the declaration of faith. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah Muhammed Rasulullah.
What was the significance of him asking you to do that? What was he trying to say to you? In layperson's terms, what was he trying to say to you?
You want to be Muslim?
Right.
Yeah, you want to be Muslim? So I thought about it for a split second, but I said, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, repeat after me. So I repeated after him. And me being Dominican and speaking Spanish, then I was able to mimic Arabic speech, even when I didn't know what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
But, he gave me the Shahadatain in Arabic, then explained to me in English,
Mm-hmm.
and I did it. So he said, come back for dinner, and I'm going to have a prayer written out for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we did it. I came back, and he had the prayer for me, and we in a level 5, so I wasn't around Muslims to where somebody could teach me.
Right.
So he just wrote it out in detail with the transliteration, and I just started that same day. I started that evening. I would just sit there, hold a paper, and outside of prayer, I was always practicing the verses that I had to say in the prayer, and I learned it, So, it was one of those things to where I knew nobody was going to understand. But at this point, I had learned enough and I had seen enough, and my heart was obviously yearning and asking for it because God gave it to me. And when He did give it to me, I was able to pick it up and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't smooth. It wasn't smooth for the simple fact that obviously I had my wife I had been with for 8 years, and she was Catholic. Going to church with her mother, and we was living this life, me and my side and her on her side. So, as you would think, if I was gonna make a decision like that, you would think I would talk to her about it. But I didn't even know I was gonna do it that day. A, I had that dream, and B, I didn't go to Chow Hall to do anything but get food, and it just transpired that way. So when I talked to her that same day, this is how my life worked. Alhamdulillah. I'm talking to my wife, and she says, baby, I got these books my mother gave me. They're about Islam, written by Catholic people. But they explain it to us, and they're gonna tell you this and that. So I say, I'm cool. It's too late. She was like, what you mean? I said, I'm Muslim. Oh, she snapped. She snapped. Yeah. So she's like, why you did this? Okay, like I said, I was always getting visits. So she comes next Saturday, brings all 3 of my daughters. And by this time, she had been online. She had been looking at past people that became Muslim. She came with the story about a Puerto Rican who lived in the East Coast and was Catholic like myself before, and then became Muslim, and then split him and his wife up, and this and that, and it was just, long story short, I thought she was splitting with me. And I see my daughters, and I asked all 3 of them, I said, hey, do I look like a different person? Is some? And they were like, no. So I was like, they don't know what you're talking about, because she was claiming that I had changed, that I was different, this and that. So ultimately, I told her, look, I can't ask you to be Muslim. I don't expect you to be Muslim, but what I do expect is for you to learn about it. And it blew her away that I was thinking that she was breaking up with me and I was going to let her do it. Because at this time, I had already made my decision and I was going to put God before everything or anyone. So she looked at me and was like, yo, you was going to let me break up with you? And I said, yo, if you can't be with a Muslim, that's your decision. So that opened her eyes. And she said, ultimately, she was like, yo, I understand, that makes sense. Because I told her, if you don't learn about it, then you don't know me and what I believe. So you can't possibly love me if you don't know me. So, unbeknownst to me, this was her starting to do her research only so she could come back and prove to me why I made the wrong decision. And it was less than 60 days later. It was actually like 48 days later that I get on the phone with her and she says, babe, I see why you did it. And I think I want to do it too. So I said, you ain't got to do that for me. She said, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it for God. And she came home. She came over to visit, and I gave her shahada right there, and then she declared testimony in the visit room. And that was the beginning of her journey.
MashaAllah.